we have a special guest, Mrs. Deborah Rhode. And Deborah wrote her graduate degree thesis about Naadam, and I read her thesis, and it was very in-depth anthropological analysis of the traditional Mongolian festival of Naadam. So welcome to the Mongol Academy Hub, Deborah, and thank you so much for accepting my invitation to speak at the Mongol Academy Hub. And I really appreciate you making your time available. And so, Deborah, could you please briefly introduce yourself to the viewers of my channel, please?
Well, hello. Yes, my name is Deborah Rhode. I live in New Zealand now. I was born in the UK. I grew up in Cheshire, but I've been in New Zealand for about 45, 50 years now. And this is where I studied, where I went to the University of Canterbury, actually as an adult student. And then I, of course, went to Mongolia to do my field work on Naadam.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. And so you have, as I read your thesis, I could see that you did a very extensive field study in Mongolia about Naadam. So I just wonder, would you please maybe talk about why did you decide to write your graduate thesis on Mongolian Naadam, and what motivated you to conduct ethnographic study on Mongolian Naadam?
I had always been very interested in Mongolia for many, many years. And of course, for many years, it was not possible to travel there, especially when you lived in England. It was very far away. So when I came to looking for a subject for my thesis, I thought, here's a wonderful opportunity to go to Mongolia and learn more about the country and to visit. And so I initially went really with a very open mind, just to learn more about Mongolia. And what intrigued me when I got there was such a vast country, not a lot of people, historically even less than there are today, of course, but there was a very unique sense of Mongolian identity. It seemed throughout the whole country, there was this very unique Mongolian way of living, thought, ideas, religion. Despite being surrounded by two vast nations, Russia and China, they, of course, have had an influence on some parts of Mongolian culture, but they have certainly not taken away the essence, I found, of what were Mongolian traditions. And so I was trying to figure out how this could be, because nomadic people traveled, of course, in their own area, but not from one side of the country to the other. And then I began to think that I also arrived at the time of the Naadam Festival, and I wanted to learn more about it. And as I did and realized that it was practiced in, of course, the capital city of Ulaanbaatar, I was fortunate enough to go to the 800th anniversary of Mongolia. It was a wonderfully huge Naadam. And then I found it was also the very similar format was conducted in every town, village, small village, down to the community. And then as each community conducted their Naadam, then people, the winners of the different sports would then go to the town Naadams. And so in that way, people were actually, they weren't physically traveling themselves throughout the country, but the rituals of Naadam and what I found very unique Mongolian rituals. And I figured out that's how it traveled around the country, that there were these sort of circles going round and round for hundreds of years. So that was really the basis of my, how I began to be interested in really investigating Naadam, because I found it fascinating.
Okay, thank you so much. So in your thesis, you very beautifully but extensively explained the genesis of Naadam. Would you please tell us the origin of Naadam and how it was originated? What is the genesis of Naadam? And why have the wrestling, horse racing, and archery become so emblematic of Mongolian life in the ancient time?
Right. Well, yes, it seemed that they all evolved from necessity of daily life, really. Horse racing was, of course, a way of life, natural form of transport and for hunting. Wrestling was very important to keep men in shape and to wrestle. Well, what we think was they were originally wrestling animals, wrestling bears, which seems extraordinary, but apparently the hunting technique was to chase them, so they were tired, and then the archery, of course, was obviously necessary also for hunting. But also these things became came to be involved with rituals of worship for all the nomadic people on the steppe. Yeah, so then what I found was when Genghis Khan united all the tribes and the state of Mongolia, as we know it now, of course it wasn't called it then, but the Mongolian tribes became under one ruler, which was a first, really, that they all became united.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that was when the first Naadam, as we know it now, was instituted. Of course, there's not a lot of written history, but pulling threads from here and there, that's what it seemed to me, that there was a specific, when he was inaugurated as the great chief, there was horse racing, archery, and wrestling, and they were the games part, and then there's also the civic or religious part of the ceremony. But that was what I found from my research, that these three, what we now call games, were actually part of religious ritual and also essential for everyday life. Mm-hmm. And it seemed that it was Genghis Khan that possibly brought these all together in a formal ceremony that has been practiced in various shape or form ever since, for over 800 years.
Naadam is a national festival of Mongolia celebrated every year for 3 days from the 11th of July through the 13th of July. The festival is also traditionally termed as the Three Games of Men, which include the traditional Mongolian style of wrestling, horse racing, and archery. Some of you may assume that these three games are only for men to participate, but women do participate in archery, and also girls participate in horse racing. But wrestling is only for the men. The Mongolian Naadam Festival is inseparably connected to the nomadic civilization of the Mongols, who have long practiced the mobile pastoral herding on Northeast and Central Asian steppe. Therefore, it is celebrated among the Mongol ethnic minorities in Inner Mongolian Autonomous Region of China, and also among the Buryat Mongols in Buryat Republic of Russia, and among Tuvans in Tuvan Republic of Russian Federation, as well as among the Kalmyk Mongols in Kalmyk Republic of Russian Federation. In 2010, Naadam was recognized by UNESCO as one of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So the way Mongols celebrate Naadam reflects all aspects of lifestyle, culture, tradition, spiritual belief system, and other tangible and intangible symbols of Mongols. The festival also reflects the Mongolian history, customs, Mongol identity, as well as the Mongol people's self-determination in increasingly globalized world. So now let's dive into the details of how we celebrate Naadam. Basically, the Naadam festival consists of the following 6 parts: the procession of state 9 white banners, opening ceremony, wrestling, horse race for different ages of horses, archery, and ankle bone shooting. The procession of state 9 white banners. Naadam festival starts with the procession of state 9 white banners, and then the opening ceremony starts after this ritual ceremony to transfer the state 9 white banners from the government palace to the Naadam stadium. These are the state 9 great banners. The great white banners are also called 9 white sult. Sult means sacred spirit in Mongolian language. and the other name for these state banners in Mongolian language are the nine-legged white banner. The white banners symbolize the spirit, sovereignty, and unity of the Mongolian state. The banners are made of white horsemen, and on the top of the coat of arms there is a three-pointed steel fork which displays a shape of three flames of a fire, because fire represents prosperity, regeneration, and success. The three tongues of the flame represent the past, present, and future. There are four steel rings hanging on both sides of the banner, and the rings symbolize strength. There are 9 banners, which consists of one main crest circled by 8 envoy banners, and that's why it is called as 9 white banners. It is recorded in the sacred history of Mongols that when Chinggis Khan was raised to the throne of an emperor of all Mongols united under his reign in the summer of 1206, the 9 white banners were raised in a ritual ceremony, and Chinggis Khan bowed to the 9 white banners. Since then, the 9 white state banners have become a symbol of the unity of Mongol people and the sovereignty of the Mongolian state. The white banners are carried by honorary guards on horseback. The honorary guards who carry the 9 white banners ride 9 white horses, followed by 21 infantry soldiers riding dark horses. The white color of the banner and the white horses symbolize peace and purity. The red and blue colors of the honorary guards' costume are also significant colors in Mongolian tradition, as blue symbolizes the eternal blue sky and red symbolizes fire. So that's why the red and blue are the main colors of the Mongolian state flag. Although Mongolia has a secular state, the 9 white banners are kept in the government palace, and its ritual ceremony is held on a very few special occasions, including the annual celebration of Naadam Festival. In the government palace, the 9 white banners are placed on the mandala-shaped base, which was cast with soil samples from all provinces in Mongolia. At 11 a.m. on the morning of the 11th of July, the 9 great white banners are welcomed into the stadium to the cheers of the crowd. The state honorary soldiers ride in procession in a clockwise direction around the stadium. Basically, on the first day of Naadam on July the 11th, this ritual act of transferring the great 9 white banners from the government palace and to the Naadam Stadium is a must-watch state ritual ceremony on Naadam for both local Mongolians and international tourists. The opening ceremony of Naadam starts with this ritual act of transferring the state 9 white banners to the Naadam Stadium. This ritual act of 9 white state banners also takes place at the end of the Naadam Festival, symmetrical to the opening one, which demarks the end of the festive activities and return to the mundane daily life. The formal return of the great white banners to the government building marks the closing of Naadam for the year. During the communist era from 1920s until 1990, this ritual act of state 9 white banners procession was officially suspended. However, in 1992, Mongolia reinstated this ceremony. The procession and the placing of the state 9 white banners are accompanied by music performed by the Mongolian Military Army Brass Band. The piece of music played specifically for this ritual of 9 white state banners procession was composed by famous Mongolian state-honored composer Jantsinoro Natsagdorj. Now let's take a quick glimpse of the state 9 white banners procession that takes place at the opening ceremony of Naadam. This is the highlight of Naadam Festival for both Mongolians and international tourists. Following the placement of 9 white banners, the President of Mongolia makes opening speech along a wide red carpet on a round dais located just to the north of the 9 white state banners guarded by 4 honorary guards. The dais is usually covered in white felt, which is a long-held ceremonial tradition of Mongols and dates back to the 13th century. The Sacred History of Mongols states that the inauguration of Genghis Khan took place on a white felt carpet. At the conclusion of the president's speech, singing of the national anthem starts. The president places his hand on his heart throughout the singing of the national anthem, and all the spectators in the stadium stand up and place their hand on their heart during the anthem singing. The president then pays tribute to the 9 white banner and touches his forehead to show respect and loyalty. After the president's speech, the entertainment component of the opening ceremony begins. After the official formalities, the center field of the Naadam Stadium comes to life with thousands of colorful performances. The performances often theatrically portray the major historical events in Mongolia. Sometimes the major historical figures such as Genghis Khan and historical Buddhist leaders of Mongolia, as well as the traditional Mongolian nomadic pastoral herding lifestyles. Through such drama performances on the Naadam stage, the Mongolian people are reminded of their golden age, major historical turning points, and their ancient traditions and customs. The performances often portray positive attributes of Genghis Khan as a great leader and founding father of the Mongol nation. The opening ceremony also shows a shamanic fire ceremony. The fire ceremonies are part of traditional spiritual belief system of Mongols because fire is considered to be holy and worshipped as one of the oldest spiritual conceptions of the Mongols. In both Mongolian Buddhism and traditional shamanistic practices, the fire deity has the function of protection and uninterrupted lineages of Mongols. That's why the ritual of lighting a fire is also performed at wedding ceremonies and some other rituals. The fire ritual is often followed by mass dance performances. The rhythmic articulation, theme, and variation of the dance choreography is both traditional and modern. There is also a demonstration of trick riding horses during the opening ceremony simultaneously with the dance performances. For instance, a rider carrying a golden pass that used to be issued to travelers, merchants, and foreign ambassadors with orders from the Great Khan's court during the Mongol Empire period in the 13th century. With the Golden Pass, the travelers, merchants, and foreign ambassadors were provided with safety, security, horses, food, and lodging when traveling throughout the Mongol Empire in the 13th century. Such displays of horsemanship portrays the importance of horses to the Mongolian identity, and horses have been an essential part of many myths of Mongolian folklore. The dancers, performers, martial arts demonstrations, and equestrian displays all reflect the symbolically demonstrated unity of Mongols. The opening ceremony not only emphasizes the ancient traditions and customs of Mongols, but also portrays the modernity of Mongolia and the adoption of outside influences in the Mongolian arts and culture. Along with the performances that portray ancient cultural practices, there are European opera and Western rock music, and young Mongolian people performing modern dance, and demonstrations of Western classical ballet and ballroom dancing as well. In that way, it gives the message to the audience that we keep pace with the changing world while retaining our distinct traditional identity. So in your thesis, you also very extensively but also beautifully claim that how Naadam reflects the distinct Mongol identity based on very solid anthropological evidence. And can you explain to us why Naadam reflects the distinct Mongol identity?
It is from this historic era that the games enacted at these festivals began to be recorded in historical literature solely relating to the Mongols, and they continued as a form of celebration by the Mongol people. Based on this finding, the evidence indicates that the rituals and symbols inherent in these festivals began the process of displaying a distinct Mongolian identity. I argue, however, that the Mongol people do have claim to a common heritage. They were members of an ethnic community as defined by Smith, according to his criteria of having a collective name, a common myth of descent, a shared history, a distinctive shared culture, and an association with a specific territory and a sense of solidarity. Smith argues that an ethnic community must demonstrate its solidarity actively and have a strong sense of belonging, which overrides factionalism and rivalry. I suggest that Naadam may have played an important part in maintaining this identity, this unity. This is the actual wording recorded in the 14th century from section 202 of the Secret History of the Mongols, and indicates the understanding of the Mongol nation as a unification of a people of similar culture and heritage, rather than just a geographical or political entity. Mm-hmm. And this has been my thesis in the culture, is the difference between the identity of the people, not just the geographical. I've endeavored to demonstrate how the Naadam Festival, as a performative event, has over the centuries been adopted and adapted into the cultural, political, and religious worldview of the Mongol people to become a unique manifestation of Mongolianness. From this basis, it then became an important tool in nation building in the 20th century to engender unity, national identity, and a sense of nationalism, culminating in its manifestation as Mongolians' National Day Festival. The Naadam Festival became uniquely Mongolian by its continued performance in a Mongol context since the formation of the Mongol nation in 1206, when it was adopted by the court of Genghis Khan as a festival of celebration. And it would have, by association, become more than a folk festival, and perhaps became connected with the power of the sky god Tengri, from which Genghis Khan received his power to rule. Okay. Mm-hmm. When the games became codified into a celebratory festival with the establishment of the Buddhist Danshig Naadam Festival, it was a celebration of the Khalq tribes only, and would have facilitated unity between the Khalq tribes by their mutual involvement in rituals. After the Civil War, the Khalq Mongols became dominant and ultimately led the move towards independence from Chinese suzerainty. Thus, the Khalq nation identity became the national. It was the Khalq Danshig Naadam that became the blueprint for the National Day ceremony today. Since in 1991, the new democratic government set about returning Naadam to a Mongolian cultural manifestation as a source of pride and identity. Naadam is unique to Mongolia, to Mongolians, and to Mongolian diasporic communities across the globe. Clearly, Naadam has become an important symbol of Mongolianness and is enacted as a representation and a boundary marker by Mongolians to express their unique identity. By regularly performing the Naadam Festival, the Mongolian people are continually constructing and reconstructing their culture, customs, traditions, values, and identity to themselves and to the world beyond. And I have been to a Naadam Festival in London, and it is performed in many, many nations around the world, and that actually is an aspect of Naadam that I'm quite interested in pursuing, and how in different countries it is performed almost always the second weekend in July, but slightly differently. As for example, in London, it was performed in a city park. They didn't have horse racing, mm-hmm. but they had archery and wrestling, and of course lots of Mongolian food, particularly if I pronounce it right, horserace. Mm-hmm. Did I pronounce that right? Yeah. And it was a wonderful festival. There wasn't the ritual, the religious aspects or Buddhist aspects in this case, but it was still the day of Naadam and the archery, wrestling, traditional dress. And I do know in France and, well, many countries. I was fortunate in 2006 when for the 800th anniversary to be in Ulaanbaatar, and there was a convention of world Mongols, that it was called, and Mongolian people from I think there are about 30 different nations all gathered in Ulaanbaatar, and we're able to discuss how they celebrated their Mongolian culture. And most of them, they said there was some sort of Naadam carried on. That could just be archery, just wrestling, but some sort around the globe. So that's also made me realize that how important it is to the Mongol people. That was one thing that they kept. It was very much the spirit of Naadam that was so important to the Mongolian people I spoke to during my field work. I would ask them, why is Naadam so important to you? Why is it so special? And they just would say, it's in my heart. Naadam is Mongolian. And it, yes, I think that's one thing that Mongolian people feel. So when they come together at Naadam, it's not just to watch or to take part in the sport, but it is that communication of a cultural closeness and identity and unity that Mongolian people recognize in each other. And I think it is because it has been passed down very sort of physically by going to the events. People go as a family. Nowadays, sometimes they watch it on TV, but it is still something people would do as a family and with friends. And it just runs very deep, and it does have a very long history, which I think is probably why. And of course, a lot of the rituals are unique. So many countries have horse racing as a national tradition, or like Bhutan has archery as a national tradition. But Naadam brings those three sports together, and it's that also makes it very unique and Mongolian. But I just found most of all, it was just the emotion that people had about Naadam is what it means to be Mongolian. And I found that wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah.